Hey everybody, Brian Good here. Welcome to the Release Alert for this Tuesday. Let's get through the setup today, and then we'll dive in a little more into the heat part of things coming up in a second. We have this outflow boundary, the leftovers, debris stuff from the severe weather that we had in central Indiana Monday evening. That came through here and really just disintegrated because we have quite a bit of still warm air aloft across Kentucky, so that just kind of is not the imbalance that thunderstorms need to keep going, and they just fade out. So it still remains an issue here where the better winds, better moisture content overall is still there. And plus there's several boundaries still across Indiana for more repeated development. So again, the stream flow is not crazy strong, but it's enough to at least move them in some direction. But they are feeding on boundaries, which can cause them to take some sudden turns one way or another. Indianapolis getting rocked right now. We'll keep an eye. There is a boundary that's located just south of here. It's struggled to get going, but so far this activity is going to track a little more toward Columbus, looks like, and clip Jackson and Jennings County. If you look carefully, you can kind of see a hint of that boundary right in there across western areas of Lawrence County. So we'll see if that can develop at the last minute or not. We'll see. Otherwise, most activity is going to aim itself right in through this corridor over the next few hours, all before lunch, by the way. Now here's the wider view, and we have more activity. It's several impulses, really, just kind of following the same train track, if you will, one after another. This is actually the overnight one. There's this morning. Here's this afternoon. And it's a 1, 2, 3 kind of deal. But the steering flow winds are, like yesterday, as I mentioned, are still more of an angle to them, where they are dropping down and then to the southeast, and then take a turn more toward Ohio. And that's mainly because a lot of the moisture, too, is the deeper moisture still, along with the better wind flow is. Yes, we have decent moisture across northern Kentucky, even western Kentucky at that, but it also, there's a cap in this area, so it's not being taken advantage of. But when you have the weak cap, somewhat decent wind, and you have the moisture content all working together across I-70, then that's where your thunderstorm zone is going to be today. So it's pretty easy forecast, really, when it comes to that. And the Storm Prediction Center has a fairly easy map to draw because you just kind of outline where those all overlap. And you can't roll out a few warnings, and just like yesterday, you can't roll out an isolated tornado warning. And I think that's going to be more of an issue for the I-70 corridor itself into Ohio today, more so than any of our counties. We'll watch it because technically we are in the marginal risk just north of Louisville in the I-71 corridor. And that's mainly, too, because some of these outflows, these little tails that can form off of these little blasts of thunderstorms can build down briefly to the south before fading, like the one did this morning. And it's that fading downward part that can cover a few counties south of the main flow, which is why some of our counties in Wave Country are included in that zone. All right, here's a couple of the high-res models. Here is the HRRR model, which initialized pretty good. It has this first round moving on through. So downpours passing through the area. We'll get a break. Here comes the afternoon activity. Notice that it really blossoms in Ohio. I mean, some of the parameters coming down on the HRRR model anyway would indicate more of a slight risk may be needed for Ohio later on. Southeast Indiana and Ohio. We'll see if they make that change later on here today. Otherwise, it should, and there will be a tail to it, as I mentioned. These outflows can produce little tails, so they will try to build to the south, but they just, once they get I-64, that's the line there, they just are going to struggle to go any more south than that. And I doubt they'll even get to Louisville the way it looks. That's why we're keeping the rain chance right now at 20%. And then they just fade out altogether for the overnight. Now, let's look at the RPM model. It did not initialize as good, but it had a general idea. One this morning and then one this afternoon. It's a little further north with the activity. But you see the little tail action to it, the little outflows. But you notice how even the outflow tail to it it too builds south, but also kind of drifts due east. So it's kind of fascinating to watch how that plays out, and then things quiet down from there. So not a big deal the next couple of days. But then we get into Wednesday. Wednesday, we have a fairly strong cap for just about all 29 of our counties, and I think at that point we need to pay attention to the heat. Actual temperature, as we'll get into the second, about 90 to 92, but the heat index could get up there into the mid to upper 90s, even close to 100 in some spots. Certainly possible. And the thing is, Thursday, we do have thunderstorms in the forecast Thursday. Before, though, they move in, we may have moisture pull up ahead of the front in the afternoon with a mix of some hazy sunshine before the rain takes over, and that combination really will allow Thursday to be the most oppressive day to be outside. And dangerous heat, in fact, getting close to advisory criteria. Not quite. I believe ours is 106 for 3 hours. We get close, but it's still, that's tough to deal with on Thursday, so kind of a heads up on that. But we do have to deal with the rain at some point on Thursday, and I think it'll be Thursday afternoon and evening. And it looks like it's going to be a situation, too, by the way, that we're going to see the more active activity across Indiana and along 64 during the afternoon and evening hours Thursday. That'll fade out, and then Friday it'll redevelop wherever the front is positioned at that point, and that should be very close to 64. And then those could be strong, but it may be a situation more over Kentucky than Indiana on Friday's activity, and then that'll fade out. And then we get that dry slot in here for the weekend. When you look at the models and the ensembles, here is the GFS, Euro, Canadian, the actual models, and then the ensembles of each. I know it's technical stuff, but all you need to know is really is 3 models you're looking at here with different ideas. But the pink area is the heat core. And this weekend, we got this dip right over us. The ensembles agree. You want these 2 panels, by the way, to match of each model. That's always a good sign. The Canadian can't see out very far. That's why it loses the image, and we'll lose the Euro, too, here shortly. But anyway, they all agree that we're going to have cooler weather this weekend. And I say cooler, not like 70. I'm talking about 88, 89, maybe even 90. But the humidity will be knocked down, not dramatically. It'll just be knocked down a bit. It'll still be an improvement. We'll take it. There's still that sign of that secondary front as we head into Sunday, which is turning more now into not really a front, but more of a closed low scenario. And the Euro seems to be the only one really catching on to that idea as we head into next week, that a closed low kind of gets blocked off in the mid-Atlantic, and that may prevent the heat from really going gangbusters initially. Now, its ensemble isn't agreeing on that. It's going with the heat building in, so is the Canadian and really the GFS. GFS, by the way, the operational model is already jumping on the idea of the tropics. I think it's maybe too aggressive, too quick on that idea, but I can see why. You build a ridge in, and tropical systems love to go under a ridge, and it makes sense. But the model could be seeing phantom systems too, so you got to be careful with that. But it's interesting to see, though, that little cutoff there into the Euro. That is something we'll be watching in the coming days to see if that keeps popping in, and then we'll see if the ensembles catch up to that. Because even as we look into about the end of next week, the GFS has got us in the upper 90 range in the upper Midwest in Ohio Valley. The ensembles got basically low to mid 90s, same story on the Euro and the Canadian. But the Euro itself, the operation is still holding on to that closed low, kind of dipping down into South Carolina. So it too would keep the core of the heat at bay. So there's still not a lot of agreements here on how this heat is going to play out. Not surprisingly, because it's going against the grain of what has happened so far this summer. So we'll see if that plays out. This little red spot there, by the way, it's still the tropics the GFS is seeing. One thing, though, that the reason why I think that the actual numbers, I think the highest I've got in now is 95. And I'll stop there. And that would be the hottest we've been so far this year. And the reason for that is our ground moisture, soil moisture here is running above normal. And that allows the actual temperature to be slower to rise during the day and slower to fall at night, by the way. But the heat index can get up there. So, yeah, we're talking about that heat index here on Thursday of 100 to 103. It could be hotter than that, possibly into advisory level with that much moisture in the air from all the plants and the greenery we got in the area. So that's something we'll watch. And then as with the last period here of July, you start to see this the familiar pattern we've had most of the summer so far, and that's where we get a troughiness back into the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. We knock the heat down a bit, and we get some thunderstorms back into play. And that is more than likely going to happen. All right, so we'll see how it looks coming up tomorrow, guys. Have a good one.